Hey, welcome to Legacies, everyone. We're having a special episode this week in honor of International Women's Day. Today, we're joined by Katie Pringle of Marigold Marketing and PR in support of the Radical Femmes event that is coming up. We've posed some questions to some of our speakers that are very prominent within this industry, and we're looking forward to their feedback. But first, Katie Pringle, welcome back to
Thanks,
Legacies.
Tom. Thanks for having me back.
Of course. You're so good on the first one. We thought, let's get you on again. But listen, we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate the event that you're hosting, Radical Femmes, not the first one, but this one is aligned with International Women's Day, which is March 8th. Your event is March 6th, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. And you've got a great lineup of speakers. Oh my God. Like powerhouse speakers.
Yeah, we're really excited about the day. Thanks so much for your support, Tom. We really appreciate you giving us a chance to talk about
Of
this
course.
again. This is our second International Women's Day themed event with Radical Femmes. We launched it on International Women's Day last year. We're really excited about the day. It's a slightly longer format than our networking format events. So this one, we've got a couple panels with amazing speakers, like you mentioned, one focusing on retail and one focusing on brands. So we have a
Mhm.
good mix of retail founders and leadership, along with lots of LPs represented. And we also have the OCS, who's a VIP partner, doing a presentation on insights for women as cannabis consumers, which I'm really excited to learn more about.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. I think as we move forward in this industry, we're still not doing justice to the women that play these crucial roles within the industry. I think every industry, I mean, to be honest, the fact that we have to have International Women's Day is saying something, right? It should be something that's more inclusive and it's just top of mind and we're realizing it. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the challenges that women are facing in cannabis. Before we get to the responses that we've sent over, we asked a bunch of questions of I think most of your speakers and guests that will be speaking at the Radical Femmes event. But I mean, like access to funding is still, difficult. And is that are we seeing that because of male versus female and women led organizations versus men? Like, is it more challenging for women to have access to funding?
100%. And that's an issue across the board, like you just mentioned, in every industry. But in our industry, where funding is such a challenge, that makes it even more difficult for female founders to go after the capital that they need.
Yeah, which is sad. Again, it's you talk about raising capital in this industry. It's you hold your breath, right? Or don't hold your breath, but you should hold your breath. And then what about like representation and leadership? Are we seeing any shift in tide or change in tide when it comes to women-led organizations or even just leadership roles within these organizations? Is there anything happening?
Yeah, unfortunately, there isn't any Canadian specific information related to our industry to reference. But out of the US, we have seen a bit of a brain drain out of the space. And that was something
Mm,
we talked a little bit about before is that, with the uncertainty in the space, women have left and we haven't necessarily seen them come back. And so our hope is that as the industry moves forward, becomes a little bit more stable, and those career opportunities can mean a little more, provide a bit more security, that we'll get some of that talent back into the industry.
mm,
But the other issue, and the piece we're really trying to activate on, is this ability to elevate and move women up. So while we
mhm.
represent a much smaller piece of the pie right now in terms of people in the industry in this space, there are lots of opportunities for improvement in terms of building out leadership roles, board positions, and even providing training to be able to elevate those women throughout the business. Because as we know, businesses that are more diverse and businesses that hire women make more money. So that
Yeah.
should matter to everyone.
Well, there's the answer to this, crazy question and equation: hire more women. And you're right. I think when you look at predominantly led male organizations, they don't necessarily function quite the same. When you have a diverse mix across those leadership roles, but is part of it, because obviously Radical Femmes, you run other events as well, which is Tether. very focused on the bud tender community and helping brands connect with those. But on the Radical Femme side, are we needing to see more networking opportunities? Like, I'm not female, so I don't necessarily know like what is the intent behind attending a normal, I just say general run of the mill event versus a Radical Femmes event where it's predominantly female or women focused. There's still men there, which we've discussed previously, but is it there's just not enough of these networking opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of it. I think it's really about one, bringing attention, right? Bringing
Mm,
attention to the issue and creating a conversation that always makes a difference, but creating a really comfortable environment. So I'm comfortable with networking. I get the sense, Tom, you do a fabulous job at networking, but that's not the case for everyone. And depending on your role, you don't actually always get the time to get out behind your desk and meet people, which, as we know, your network is everything, and building out your career involves some really key contacts. So, what this is doing is essentially providing that opportunity and hyper focusing on the ability to network with other women and other leaders in the space. I'm really proud of the fact that coming out of previous events, we've heard of people getting new job opportunities. Hearing about promotions that are coming down the pipe, being able to celebrate their
mm,
promotions with like minded people. So we have been able to make a difference for a lot of people who have told us that in other environments, they're not as comfortable. And that could be due to a myriad of things, including the fact that they perhaps haven't had a lot of chance to network in the past.
mhm.
And networking with like minded people is always a little bit more easier.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think through some of the events that I've been at, I mean, believe it or not, I'm actually quiet when it comes to being in those spaces in a lot of
Don't believe it.
cases. Yeah, well, I am. But I think through that where I'll use Legacies as an example. When we, first launched, um, we had almost immediate success with just reach. And a lot of that was due to production quality, I think. But we get a lot of, potential guests or opportunities will reach out to us. I would say 95% are male. They're either, individuals leading corporations or these organizations, or have some sort of a legacy background. We do our best to go out of our way to ensure that we have a good mix, and because honestly, women's stories are better. They really they're different. They're better. Some cases individuals love to hear those, smuggling pounds of weed, but they don't realize, like, we had Jill and Sarah from Blunt Botanicals on and talking about their origin story and what they were doing pre legalization and how this led to Blunt Botanicals. And it was just a incredible, genuine story. And they don't always need to be, fist fights and all these things going on, the macho man sentiment. But it makes me wonder, you know, I think I mentioned this last time we were on together, where when men apply for a job or they're viewing a role at a organization, if they hit 40% of the qualifications, they'll still apply. Where women, on the other hand, and this is statistical, this has been research, they need to see like 95% of the qualifications. Yes, I tick all those boxes, then I'll apply. How does that cascade into entrepreneurship when it comes to women?
Yeah, I mean, something we talk about at these events a fair amount is like put yourself out of your comfort zone, put your hand up for things, make yourself known. Um, I think things are improving on that front. I think younger generations of women are really confident. I'm really impressed with the confidence level when we interview younger candidates. I do feel it's becoming, from my perspective, a lot more even in terms of kind of male versus female confidence level in an interview. But women like myself and women older than myself, we typically had older white male bosses who have been
Right.
around for a really long time, who had a certain style of leadership. And women do lead differently. They lead with a lot more empathy. It doesn't make them any less powerful, but it's certainly a different approach.
Mm.
And I think being able to connect with other like-minded people to talk about the challenges that you're facing, I think makes a big difference. And I think younger people being able to hear the storytelling like you're saying is quite inspirational, and they have a chance to see themselves in that discussion and maybe think about how they want to do things differently, or maybe there's inspiring ways that they can apply some of those learnings.
Mm,
So, my take on it is that the younger folks, the younger generations, I do feel like women's confidence levels are coming up. I feel like they are applying in a different way than my generation might have. But hey, I've got, 20, 30 more years of working ahead, and we're all trying to improve and grow our confidence, grow our network, grow our ability to create those opportunities for ourselves.
I like that. It seems that there is an increase in diversification, and I think that in a lot of cases, it's not orgs that are setting out because of any program, government initiatives, anything like that. They are seeing, as you mentioned, women lead with more empathy. In my own experience, I've seen this a multitude of times, right? Men are black and white in a lot of cases. There is no in between. You're late for work, you're fired. You do this, right? And it's like it's so black and white, right? Where women take this empathetic understanding of, well, why? Why were you late? Or, what are you struggling with more? And I think some men leaders, they're coming around to that. And I think the younger generations that are coming, they understand that. But do you see this increase for a diversified leadership role or just workforce? Is that just happening naturally or is it being forced upon us?
I think it needs to be forced upon us in the right way.
Right.
I think change is hard. And I think, things like Radical Femmes provide an opportunity for those who are interested in increasing their network and growing their careers. It provides a comfortable opportunity for those who are interested. But it is important, as we kn like, we it goes back to that whole making money thing, like, diversity increases revenue.
Mm,
How can you understand the diverse world if you only have one type of view within your organization? And
right.
so if it all comes down to financials for leadership, then that's all you need to know is that,
Right.
that diversity is going to increase your bottom line.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm thinking through, having that diverse workforce and in this industry specifically, marketing challenges, all of these barriers, guardrails that you have to live in and you can't veer over here. And in a lot of cases, your marketing efforts and anything outside of that are left to building communities, building followings. I I tend to think women are just much better at that when it comes to truly understanding who is our core audience, who are we trying to communicate, creating the messaging that go along with attracting that community and helping to build that community versus I mean, we've seen it. We see these different organizations in our industry and you're like, yeah, they're not doing much. And then chances are if you go to their website and look at their leadership team, it's male after male after male after male versus you can see these opportunities growing where they have that diverse leadership. And I don't even want to say it's just leadership because it can be born from the floor, right? When I say floor, I mean production floor,
Yeah.
where those voices are being heard. They're taking their opinions into account versus all male led organization. Only their thoughts matter. But you see that in the success, do you not? Like I would think that these communities are much grander than they are when they're male organizations.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Kind of a couple notes on that. Women have always been outside of Reddit. They've
Yeah.
been on social significantly more than
Mhm.
men. Reddit is really the one platform that men outweigh women over there. And so this notion of sharing their lives in some capacity can be very helpful. And we see it on LinkedIn, for example, all the time, which is so important to our industry. Like you said, building communities, building your network that way. Um, and I think what also has been really neat, specifically through LinkedIn, is some other women in the space have really been sharing sort of what they're up to and
Mm,
sharing some of their work, and you get to know them alongside the brand. And I will give a shout out to Stewart Farms because they've done an amazing time, like amazing job building out their team full of influencers and people who care enough about the plant that they've built an audience based on
mm,
it. And they're also working for Stewart Farms. And so that is a really interesting perspective. And when we look at the pool of who we consider like key content creators or influencers in the space, it's the vast majority are women,
yeah.
which is really fascinating to see.
Yeah. Well, you shared some insight that I think is important to highlight, which is as a man, an individual in this industry, you don't necessarily realize the challenges that women are up against until you see, and I'm not going to mention names, but you see prominent women that typically, they're not very vocal about certain things, but they have incredible roles. But you don't see the challenges until they just pour their hearts out and they explain, this is what I've seen, this is what I've been up against, this is how I overcame it, or maybe I'm still struggling with it. How do you encourage more women to be more vocal about those challenges?
Yeah, the panels are really great. When we have those structured conversations, while it's about building retail and while it's about built brand building, the women on the panels that we have are often quite willing to share their story and be a little bit more vulnerable in front of an audience, which is really helpful for people to hear because it doesn't always feel safe to talk
Mm,
about your challenges in a business perspective. Like that's a interesting environment. Like, how much do
yeah.
you share versus, how much do you keep private?
Hmm.
But I find when you create the right setting for people, they are willing to share a little bit more and get a little bit deeper in a comfortable environment. And the trade show floor isn't always the place for that. So sometimes it's about creating these different experiences to allow for those key conversations.
Yeah, I love that. What has been the biggest highlight for running Radical Femmes that you can look back on and say, glad that we started this? Because event planning, running an event, pulling it off, execution, it's not, I mean, you guys probably have this dialed in system of doing it now, but it's challenging. I know it's challenging, but what has been the one thing that you can look back at and go, I did that, and I'm glad I did that?
Yeah, I really think it's about enabling and supporting business women to move their businesses forward, and seeing people end up in new roles coming out of these events, and the positive sentiments that we get back after make it all worthwhile. And shout out to my team who has been working their butts off getting everything together. They've been working really hard, but there is this overwhelming gratitude from this industry after these events that really propels you forward. It's like, yeah, we got to keep doing these. People are loving it and we're loving it too. It fuels your soul a little coming out of these events.
Yeah, I love it. So the one coming up, March 6th, tell us about that and tell us a little bit about what is going to be a bit different than the last one that you've done.
Sure. Yeah, so the event on March 6th is at Saluna. So we're at the same venue. It's beautiful and they provide an amazing lunch. So the format of the event, we run 10 to 2. Our panels, like I mentioned, are a little different this year. So the first one's really focused on retail. And then the second one is really focused on brand building from an LP perspective. Excited that we have the OCS, the SQDC, and some really amazing women in leadership in the room. So lots of important key contacts there for people to connect with. The two panels will be followed by an OCS presentation about insights as women as consumers. And then we do lunch and networking. And so that allows everyone to meet folks in the room. We'll have some cool brands on site. We've got Green Monkey, who's doing a bar takeover, which will be really fun. And the IRCC will be on site to talk to all the retailers and some of the brands. And Glacial Gold will also have a setup. So it goes by really fast, but there's some learning, a great lunch, and then networking.
Wow, I love that. That's a full day. How do you fit all of that into 4 hours?
I don't know, but somehow we make it work.
That's crazy. Well, listen, we posed a bunch of questions to the speakers that will be at the event, and we're excited to be able to showcase them here. So, Katie, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to go through and into all of those incredible responses now. Congrats and best of luck, I guess, because we're recording this ahead of time. But congrats on such an incredible platform. I think that it says something when you're going out of your way. Because again, we know the work that's involved. We know how much of a challenge it can be, but the reward is just incredible as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Thank you for your support, Tom. You guys are amazing to us, so really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for joining Legacies.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emma Andrews. I'm the CEO of Nextleaf Solutions. I'm here in Victoria on Vancouver Island. You may even see there's a few dear friend behind me. How idyllic, I have to say. I wanted to come on here and just chat a little bit about my own career journey. I've been really fortunate to have a number of really unique opportunities through my career that have put me in positions of visibility, in positions of leadership at an early stage. I've had some amazing mentors. Spent about a decade in the natural products industry before joining cannabis 6 years ago. I've been with Nextleaf Solutions for that entire time, consulting at first and then moving into a full-time capacity. But it's given me such a broad breadth of exposure, and that experience combined with my tenure is really why I was selected to be the CEO when the role became available. I know I'm at a bit of a rarity in terms of being a woman in leadership, being a woman in leadership in cannabis, as well as being on a board of directors. And I take that responsibility to heart. And I also believe that representation and visibility matters. And so I think it's really important for women in positions of leadership to use your voice, to put yourself out there for visibility and networking and education opportunities, to make sure that females in leadership are highly visible. And I think that helps to demystify potentially what's possible for other people. I have been kind of coining this phrase, bud tender to boardroom. And for me, that's really about empowering the next generation of leadership within cannabis. I really think it's valuable to have that frontline experience, to be embedded in the community, the connection that's the root of the industry, and, maybe to be up close and personal with consumers on a regular basis. I think that gives you such a strong pulse point for the industry. And so to be a bud tender at one point in your career and in the boardroom at another point in your career, I encourage you to look out for mentorship. So maybe this is someone in a role a couple stages beyond where you are now. Getting visible in the industry, attending events, putting yourself out there to network, volunteering, speaking at different events or expos, contributing content to different publications as an example. So use your voice. You've got one and you've got an opinion. I know you do. So put it out there. And I think also overcome your performance anxiety. Everyone feels it. Everyone's got that kind of niggling imposter syndrome. But if you truly feel aligned with your passion and your purpose, your performance will reflect that. And I think you should, just check the bags for that imposter syndrome at the door. I also encourage you to think like an entrepreneur. You have to embrace risk. You have to embrace failure, and be willing to pivot and be agile. I think all those traits and all those strengths are really paramount to becoming a strong leader. And I think those combined with experience, so time and tenure in the industry, will ultimately put you forwards as the best candidate out of merit. But having the right connections, I think, is really going to be what unlocks the door. So, that's my kind of passionate stance on building the talent pipeline and encouraging more female leaders within cannabis to elevate their careers. And can't wait to see you at Radicle Femmes coming up in March.
I would say women in cannabis face many of the same systemic barriers that are often seen in other industries. At least from the conversations that I've had with other women, the main barriers that keep getting brought up are topics such as limited access to capital, underrepresentation in leadership roles, and the biases that make it harder for us to be taken seriously in those roles. But in cannabis, I do think that these challenges are amplified. And I think that's because this industry is still so young, it's rapidly evolving, and often it's dominated by legacy structures that historically have excluded women. There's also the added layer of stigma around cannabis, which can make it harder for women especially for women of color, to break into leadership roles and feel comfortable showing up fully as ourselves. To break down these barriers, I think we need to take intentional action. It's not a question of if companies should prioritize diversity, but I think it's a must to prioritize diversity in hiring and also in leadership development. I think investors need to put their money behind women-led businesses. And I think women in the industry, we need to uplift each other by creating mentorship and funding opportunities. Change doesn't really happen passively, right? So we have to do what we have to do to build the systems that we wish existed. I think mentorship is critical in cannabis because it's an industry that's still very much in its infancies. Unlike traditional sectors where there's very clear-cut career path, cannabis is still evolving. And I think, at least for me, that's what makes it so exciting. And that's one of the reasons I was so drawn to it. You can literally forge a path that feels right for you. And learning from those who have navigated it before is invaluable. Having a mentor means you'll have access to guidance, to connections, and to insights that can help save you from unnecessary setbacks. Personally, mentorship has been a game changer in my career. The women and industry leaders I've learned from have given me not just advice, but they've given me many opportunities, whether it be introductions to key players, insights into business strategies, or simply the confidence to take up space in rooms that weren't necessarily built for me. I really wouldn't be who I am today without the many women I've been very fortunate to cross paths with as I've risen in my career. I think access to capital is likely the biggest challenge for women entrepreneurs in cannabis. The numbers don't lie, right? So women, we all know, receive a fraction of venture capital compared to men. And in cannabis, where funding is already difficult due to federal restrictions and stigma, it's often even tougher. Investors do tend to default to funding people that look like them, which means women, especially women of color, tend to be overlooked a lot. I think to address this, we need more women in investment roles and more women-led funds that prioritize diverse founders. We need to better educate investors so that they see the value and success of women-led businesses rather than just seeing them as a risk. I think women in the industry can help each other by amplifying each other and supporting each other, sharing opportunities, pooling resources, and, making sure women-led businesses get the visibility that they deserve. I think networking is essential and so important when it comes to your career, but in a male-dominated industry, traditional networking spaces can feel unwelcoming or inaccessible to women. Too often, networking happens in settings that cater to a very specific demographic. And I think it was actually at my first Radical Femme event that I came to this realization. I've been to my fair share of events, but that afternoon I had met so many amazing women who I had never seen at any other event before. And when I'd asked them why that was the case, a lot of it really came down to them just not feeling comfortable in those spaces. So to create more inclusive networking spaces, we need to be more intentional about where we're hosting these events and how we connect with women. I think women-led industry events like Radicle Femmes are so important, but so are mentorship circles and professional groups that center women's experiences. But beyond that, men in leadership roles also need to step it up, actively inviting women into spaces, amplifying their voices, and ensuring that they're part of the decision-making conversations. For young women entering the industry, it's crucial to have structured career development programs, paid internships, and mentorship programs that really set them up for long-term success. We need companies to invest in women, not just at leadership levels, but at every level from the ground up.
Mentorship has played a pivotal role in my career, and it continues to be the driving force in leadership development across the industry. At High Tide, I've had the pleasure of working alongside leaders who have challenged me, pushed me, and helped me navigate a rapidly changing and highly competitive landscape. But mentorship shouldn't just be about advice. It should also be about active sponsorship. It's one thing to offer guidance, but what truly accelerates women's empowerment is having advocates who champion their advancement in executive spaces or rooms that they might not otherwise be in, whether that's through strategic introductions, making recommendations for these executive roles, or ensuring that they have the visibility to influence key decisions. And in my role as a leader, I've seen firsthand how mentorship can create pathways for women to thrive and succeed, whether that's through coaching, providing support with their career development, or providing guidance when it comes to strategic initiatives. I truly believe that mentorship is about empowerment and ensuring that women have the tools, confidence, and network in order to drive high impact initiatives and in order to seamlessly transition into these executive roles.
I think that in my experience, the barriers that women face in taking on executive roles in cannabis are the same as anywhere else. At the end of the day, waiting for anyone to let you into the C-suite is maybe not the most productive way to go. And I think that we are always, or at least in the near future, going to see women in cannabis creating their own roles, much like I did with my own store. I think that mentorship is essential in any space, in any career, but that mentorship does not always have to come from other women, and it does not always have to look directly applicable to what you're doing. The people who have really mentored me the most in this industry, to be honest, are men. I've been really, really welcomed by a lot of people, and I think that one thing that we faced a little bit in talking about some of these issues are the way we handle gender in society. We do sort of have this thing of men and women can't be platonic friends. They can't just be great colleagues who love and respect each other. And as a queer person, that doesn't resonate with me. So I think that we need to maybe think of it less as men and women and more as just community and more as how do we look out for each other and how do we build something that is strong and inclusive for everybody and isn't looking at people based on who they are and what their genitalia may or may not be. This is a bigger question than I think it sounds like it is. On the surface, you have asked me, what are the challenges that women face in securing funding or starting small businesses in this space? And truly, I think that the biggest barriers that any small business will face in the cannabis industry come from our regulatory environment. Right now, the way things are structured, from the framework that Health Canada has provided down to, especially here in Ontario, how OCS operates, it is not designed to support small businesses right now. And I think that the thing that we can all do to create a market where entrepreneurs, be they men, women, anybody, can thrive is to push our regulators to make changes that support an independent cannabis industry. I think that there is always going to be a space for events like Radicle Femmes, which are geared towards women and helping us support one another. And there's always going to be a really important element of community for women, whether we're small business owners or young women in the industry, to look out for each other and protect each other. But I think fundamentally that networking has to happen in every space. And when you are in a male-dominated space like cannabis, I come from tech originally, I have taken the approach of simply not allowing anyone to see me as a girl. I know that there are going to be people who say, but you shouldn't have to do that. And I get that. But at the end of the day, I'm not here to be messed with. So if you're dealing with me in a professional environment, you are not going to be dealing with the same version of me that's on the dance floor. You're not going to be dealing with the same version of me that's gardening with my friends. You're going to be dealing with the version of me that is here to do business. And that version of me is not interested in you perceiving me as a girl. To young women just joining this industry, I will say show up to everything and follow everybody, especially other women in cannabis. I have never been so supported by other women professionally as I have in this industry. And I've been in some pretty women-dominated spaces before, so there is a whole community here that wants to lift you up, and not just the women. There are tons of men in this industry who want to create a space that is equitable and diverse, and they want to support you too.
The barriers for women getting into the executive level in the cannabis industry are very similar to any other industry. And that is that we need men and women to sponsor other women into the executive level. And that comes from having a great big pool of women to choose from. And right now there isn't a large group of women to choose from to get to the executive level. And why is that? That's the inherent nature of the cannabis industry, and that is the risk. And the risk is, number one, the volatility of the industry. We've seen a lot of ups and downs with, businesses that are around today, gone tomorrow. We're also, we need to attract people with good salaries, with benefits, with security, job security. And women typically do not enter industries that have that much risk. And until we can grow as an industry that has more of this support for just everyday workers, I don't think we're going to see women a lot of women at the executive level, because there aren't enough at them anywhere in the industry. When it comes to mentorship, I think this mentorship in this industry and in any other industry is the same. That I've certainly benefited from having great mentors in my career. Most of them were men who helped me to be more aggressive in the way I thought about it, my career, the way I thought about a problem. They taught me to bust through, believe in myself, and to not always go with a softer edge, but with a more confident edge, to be brave and bold. And I think that's what's great about the cannabis industry is we have a lot of brave, bold men. And they got into this industry, they built this industry with women. And I think we, as women, can support each other with more of a community, a camaraderie, the opportunity to cheerlead each other on, because there's not a lot. There's not a lot of us, and that's because of some of the inherent nature of the business. But there's a lot of great men out there who are just looking for great talent, and also want to see diversity in developing the narrative of their brand, of how the operations work, whatever it is. But I believe that we've got a great group of people in the cannabis industry who are ready and willing to support women. As a cannabis founder, it is definitely difficult to find cannabis money, whether you're a man or a woman. And as a woman, I think it can be more challenging because we have fewer maybe contacts or the risk of taking money. So there's a few pieces that we do need help with, but there are other women out there. There are lots of women who are willing to fund other women, and there's groups in Toronto who fund other female businesses. And I think it's networking and finding the right partners and the right arrangement that's going to work best for your business, and ultimately setting your business up for success. I think the funding is there if you want it. You can go after it and find it. Networking is definitely the key. When it comes to networking in cannabis, definitely you find that you meet probably 8 men for every 1 woman you meet. One of the things that I've noticed, certainly in the US and in Canada, but that when I go to a networking event or a conference, what I'm seeing is male-dominated panels. There's 4 people on the panel, 3 out of the 4 are men. We have to have that as an equal split. Even though there aren't that many female voices, we have to see more of that equal split on panels to demonstrate this equal opportunity, or that there are women out there. I recently saw a panel and it was 4 white guys on the panel, and I thought they probably are 4 of the most qualified people to be on that panel. But the message it sends is definitely one of that you don't see your face on that panel. And so networking after that event, when all of the people that were on the stage were men, it sets the tone. And the fact that we don't have a lot of women in cannabis events is indicative of itself. That that we have to have one is indicative of itself. Well, how do we get young women into cannabis? Well, I think that we have to make it attractive to them, number one. And that's that you can see that there are women at the top, that you too can climb to the top. And at Green Monkey, we have 50% of our executive is women and 50% is men. And so when we hire young women, they know that there is a trajectory, and that this is. And we also think about the things that are going to hold them back. So when we do events, we make sure there's no Uber rides home, or that they're not working alone. There's some parts of this industry that are there is inherent risk, and we need to be really we have to be very mindful in the way that we're putting our women out into the field and making sure that they're safe. And I think that there's a lot of success to be had here by women because of our collective strengths, which are community building. Cannabis is a community, and that's one thing that I learned very early on in my journey in cannabis, is that this is why we have an industry, is because of the community that was around it. And there were a lot of strong women who were there helping to build this community. And women want to be a part of that. And I think we'll continue to see women come into the industry. Now, nurturing them is going to take some great men, which we have in the industry, and more women. And that's the one thing we do need to build. And any industry always benefits from having a really balanced gender split. It's seen again and again in every industry. But I think in cannabis, we'll see lots of health and wellness come up on one side. We'll see different innovation for products for women, made by women. And that's where we're going to see a lot of innovation come too in the next little while. So lots of great opportunity for young women in cannabis, but it is not for the faint of heart. You do have to be confident. You have to be brave. You have to believe in yourself and find a really good tribe or some other women who will help to support you. Maybe they're not going to be your mentors, but they're going to support you through those harder times and give you the tips to keep you face all the risks and challenges that are inherent to the industry.